And that's the big part of the story. It's the king saying it to his brother. It's no longer giving him the ability to act like he's still in control. Now, obviously, we know that never at one point was any of this his idea, but they allowed him the honor of pretending that he was going to relinquish it out of the generosity of his good soul. No more! What's been going on today? Only Prince Andrew having everything stripped from him. Now, didn't we call it right here? Didn't I say that's what needed to happen? That's what everyone's been saying. It's not like I was like the lone crier in the wilderness. Everyone's been saying that he needed to have his titles stripped from him. And now he effectively has. And not just the Duke of York and the, Garter of whatever. He has to go by Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. A regular old geezer with a first and last name just like the rest of us. And now he's being thrown out of Royal Lodge. And he has to go find his own private accommodations, which shouldn't be hard for him since he has so many places to live around the world, as we found out when we read Entitled, the book all about the rise and fall. But didn't I say that book was just the end of the beginning of the story? Because we are now going to see the rest of Andrew's story. The part of the story where he's just an everyman, where he is no longer a prince and able to use all of his titles. And this is completely unprecedented. I don't know if I am even aware of one single time in which the monarchy stripped one of their own of their titles. Now, admittedly, I don't know every story about every royal, but this is very strange. And up until now, they have allowed Andrew to say that any degradation of status was his personal choice because out of the overflow of his nobility, out of the overflow of his honorability, he decided it would be best, because he cares so much about his family and of others, that even though he was completely innocent, he felt it necessary to relinquish the use of titles. Not relinquish the title, just wasn't going to use it anymore. Well, no, he didn't even get to do that. And now, King Charles has issued a statement saying he doesn't have the titles, he doesn't have the styles, and he doesn't have a house. This is what was officially put out yesterday.
Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His lease on Royal Lodge has, to date, provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease, and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censors are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse.
Scathing. Now, here's the thing. The palace has had this in mind, obviously, for a minute now. And they even tried to orchestrate a little media theater because King Charles had been away and they wanted to have some footage of King Charles going to Royal Lodge, and nobody was going to know what they said. But it was supposed to be a good visual for the people, like the king is going to come and talk to his wayward brother. Let's hope that everything we want said is being said. But it became such a circus with so many people showing up and the helicopters overhead of Royal Lodge, and it became such a fiasco that the palace called off the media. It was like, abort! The king's not stopping by Royal Lodge on his way home from his trip, okay? So it was a little bit annoying to the media who'd shown up for this great shot of the king coming in to really have words with his brother. They botched that one. But the king did go out, of course, and put out his statement saying, it's done. It's over. And I'm saying it. And that's the big part of the story. It's the king saying it to his brother. It's no longer giving him the ability to act like he's still in control. Now, obviously, we know that never at one point was any of this his idea, but they allowed him the honor of pretending that he was going to relinquish it out of the generosity of his good soul. No more, So that was a blessed bit of news. And, especially coming on the heels of having read Virginia's book, it really is the cherry on top of the whole story. Because that story's horrible. If you were with us yesterday, I think that we dealt with the material in a way that was very accessible. So if you were worried about being traumatized by the book, I think the retelling of it and the discussion of it was accessible to everybody. But it was still a really sad, horrible story. And to see that the prince has finally had to relinquish the power that gave him the ability to hurt her and hurt her for her whole life, not just at the beginning with the actual abuse, but then in the denial of it. Nobody is denying, even from his own family, that he did this. Now, they do not acknowledge his sin in the statement. You heard it. They're not saying, and we know. But you wouldn't take your brother's things from him, his title, his honor, his styles, if you thought he was completely innocent. If in your mind it was just too wild to imagine. Not my brother, If there was this idea that Andrew was not even capable of it, you wouldn't feel that you needed to make him a public example just to kind of calm the riots. You'd just be like, too bad. Because it's not like this is the first scandal to have ever hit the royal family. They are well within their ability to paper over scandal. But even they were like, you scumbag, be gone, get, So I have to say, I feel great. I feel like this is a beautiful ending to the reading from yesterday. A beautiful ending from the Virginia story. And this is... Obviously, the beautiful thing would have been if it had never happened to her, but it did. And to see somebody actually paying with actual consequences is beautiful. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Obviously, Andrew's not going to prison yet, but honestly, taking away from him his identity, who he had placed all his worth in, to strip him of that and to make him feel worthless. Honestly, is there a worse punishment for him? I mean, putting him in prison and everything would be terrible, but it's almost worse to be allowed to wander in the world, but you're not who you used to be. You're alive but dead. I mean, honestly, that sounds worse. Well, it's not worse than prison. That's not a true statement. It's not worse than prison, but it's pretty dang bad to have to be who you are, but not anymore. And all of your families turn their back on you, but you're still free, but not free. It's a weird place to be. And I don't know how he's going to handle that. Meanwhile, by the way, let's remind ourselves that Sarah Ferguson has also lost her place at Royal Lodge, because, of course, that's where she was squatting these many years. But also, what's going to go on with the daughters? I haven't heard a whole lot about that. To be honest, I haven't really looked into what's going on with Beatrice and Eugenie. Those two just don't excite much interest in me. I feel bad for them that their parents are who they are. I just don't have a lot of hope for who they'll be. Probably because, isn't it Eugenie that's really attached herself to Harry? So I feel like her judgment is skewed considerably. But I don't know. Are they going to be allowed to be called princesses anymore? How can you be a princess if your dad ain't no prince? You know what I mean? How's it going to work out for you? Are you going to be downgraded in some way? I just don't know how you retain a title that is hereditary if your dad's been stripped of his. Now, this is unprecedented circumstances, No, perhaps they'll make up a new rule for them. They didn't go out and hurt anybody that we know of. So, should they bear the consequences of their father, or should they be allowed to retain their title? But consequences of one's actions do splatter out to those around you. And it may be that he's cost his whole family everything that they had. Who knows? I'm sorry, I should have looked that up before we talked. But I know you guys know. Leave something in the comments. Are they princesses still? What are we going to do about that? Do we know? Okay.